Hey guys, welcome to the second part of our discussion about the final chapter of Trails in the Sky FC. We're now going to be talking about the final dungeon and the ending of the game. Hope you guys enjoy.
Okay, so enough about the tragedy of Hamlet. Move
Hamlet.
on.
Hamel.
Okay, enough about what's rotten in Denmark. In the final dungeon, we see something that we can do for the very first time in this game. But it's such a staple of RPGs. You can pick the party. It's not here's one or two characters assigned for the chapter. It's great. It's here's everyone you've met, everyone you've interacted with. You've touched their lives so much. They think so highly. They want to go on this final mission that may turn out to be a disaster. They're all going to fight for the cause if you want.
That you also know them very well as units because you've been forced to use them in every chapter very extensively, so you can make a tactical decision.
Its narrative works well. It gives the feeling of all hands on deck, everyone with a last desperate gamble to save the day. And gameplay, it's these characters, these units you've been using, you can use them in any combination you want with Joshua and Estelle now.
So what was your party? What did you pick?
So I went for narrative and also gameplay reasons. So Joshua and Estelle, you have to use them. So I picked Tita and Chloe because they're all from Liberal. This is an affair of Liberal, and I wanted it to be ended by these people, and especially by Chloe. She has personal involvement in this. Chloe is a mage healer. Tita is AoE. Joshua, an assassin rogue, and Estelle, sort of DPS, sort of tank. I've been reading a lot of sword art online, so I am very familiar with MMORPG party classes.
Even though
But
you've never played an MMO before.
no, but I can talk about kiting mobs and drawing aggro till the sun comes down. But then Colin told me that, oh yeah, Agate's from here. Why didn't you pick him? And I thought he was a foreigner. Otherwise, I would have.
I mean, that's fair. I think the first party I picked, I could be wrong, but I think the first time I played this, I did Josh, Estelle, Shara, and Chloe. And I think I did that because I really like Chloe's healing ability. I liked using her arts. And with Shara, I just liked Shara, and I hadn't been able to use her since the first chapter. So I was like, fine, I'll throw in Shara. This time around, I just did the same team that we did with the martial arts tournament, Zin and Olivier. And I picked this because I really like Zin as a unit. I really like how he can self-buff. He's beefy. So I like him a lot. And especially with the final boss, there's a couple of moves that are basically insta-kill, but they're not technically insta-kill. They're not death blows. And Zin can tank them, even though the rest of them can't. And with Olivier, knowing what I know about SC, I recognize that there might be an interesting cutscene between him and Cassius at the end of the game if I included him in that fight. And I was not disappointed. There was a very interesting discussion there that does lead into
Now,
SC.
I'm super curious.
Well, it's not going to be interesting to you because you don't have the SC context. But it sets a frame for an event that happens late in the game.
So in the dungeon itself, I think its design is phenomenal for the rewards that you get in the chests, because each unit has a chest with something really awesome just for them.
Yeah, it's a straight up upgrade because nobody ever shares weapons in this game. It's all unique stuff, but every character can get a pretty damn good upgrade, and also some really good armor, which is for some reason divided between men and women. But you can get 3 of each, which is the max that you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
What did you get the system to get them though?
The only flaw, the only complaint I have is knowing where to go is tough.
I mean, yes, that's the main thing. So we have to talk about 2 different features. One is how you get to the upgrades and how you earn the upgrades. Getting to the upgrades is a pain in the ass because while yes, there are signposts, I don't know what the signposts mean. So they basically don't exist. And what you have is a very futuristic setting that all looks the same. On the 3rd floor, I literally did run around in a circle because I didn't know where I was going. So that was a little bit frustrating. But the good part about it is that it does encourage you to explore, not just for these equipment upgrades, but also because you get really good healing items. Some of the top healing items in the game. And as you might be able to tell with my setup, I basically decided I don't need a healer. All of my characters are healers. They can all use items, which mostly worked. Celestial bombs are fantastic. But in order to get the upgrades, most of the chests you don't have to fight anybody, but all of the upgrades are hidden behind monster fights. And they're pretty challenging. But by virtue of going through them, number one, you get the upgrade. And number two, you also get a lot of experience. I leveled up, 4 times in the final dungeon, which was helpful fighting the final boss.
And when you get to the final boss, we really should talk about final bosses all in a row.
Yeah, I've learned that you don't like the JRP trope of, oh, you think that's the final boss? You fool.
Question. What if you're a first-time player, you go in, you fight Richard, and you barely win. You get some knocked out, or maybe everyone's in the red. Then this comes along, the Guardian. You're almost soft-locked. You could be soft-locked because you're just so destitute, out of EP, out of CP, maybe out of items, you can't win. You can't defeat boss number 2.
So I agree with you that you can be out of items. However, I'm fairly certain that the game heals you in between the fights.
What if they didn't?
But they do. So that's a moot question. I did use a lot of items on Richard because I expected that to be the end. This game didn't appear to be that futuristic. I did not expect a big giant robot to come be the real final boss. But if that were the case, and you realize I need more items to do this, you know what you can do? Load up your latest autosave. You don't even have to save because the game has autosave, and go grind for Sepith and go to the Professor Russell and buy items. He's the only guy who can sell you celestial bombs. I bought 25. I used most of them, but I managed to get through.
Shut up.
So I hear what you mean by you don't like bosses with faces. And I will say that having 3 final bosses is a little bit much, but I don't think I can't remember the last time I've played a JRPG and the final boss didn't have a second phase. I was surprised that this robot didn't turn into a boat or something.
Do you want to know how I defeated Richard and the final boss, Colin?
Did you lose until you could win?
How did you guess?
Because that's how you played the whole second half of this game.
Yeah, just the second half.
Yeah, you need to play SC on normal because if this is how you handle FC on hard, SC is going to kick your ass.
It's going to be normal.
SC is really good combat, but it is the hardest game in the series. Trails 3rd is pretty difficult too. So what did you think about the final boss, design-wise, narrative-wise?
Well, Estelle and Richard, I think, I have in the notes, it's a philosophical divergence. They are foils to each other around this animating question. How do you protect those you care about, those you love? Cooperation or force? Richard compliments Estelle. He says, you are strong. Not everyone is like you. People are weak. They're not resilient. And this screamed the conversation between Dimitri and Edelgard in Azure Moon, Fire Emblem, Three Houses, Blue Lions route, the final parlay, when Dimitri says, you are strong, Edelgard. People are weak, but not as strong as you think they are. And then she's all, you think I'm strong, do you? And it's about their competing notions of how do you lead into a better future? I mean, sidebar, Edelgard is 100% right. But going back to Richard and Estelle, it's really, they've lost people or ideals close to them. Estelle lost her mother. That's why she wants to be embraced. That is what she tells Joshua all the way back then. Richard does this because he sees what the war did, how close they came to losing everything, what it took to win. He wants that to never happen again. Estelle wants what happened to her to never happen to anyone else. It's micro and macro, cooperation or power. And I think it's so well done.
Can I just say though, Estelle giving us this big speech about how we need to trust in our fellow Liberalians kind of came to me as out of left field. It's not like Estelle had previously talked about her belief in the goodness of the citizens of her country. It's not like a politician going around saying, and I believe in the American people. Estella's never done that, but she is doing that here. And as somebody who can be kind of a little bit skeptical of my fellow countrymen, because I don't believe that you can just say, well, we'll believe in the people and the right thing will happen. I mean, Colonel Richard almost did a coup, and most people in the street liked Colonel Richard. So philosophically, I don't agree with your argumentation. Obviously, I'm against Colonel Richard. I'm against coups. Coups are not a good thing, typically. I'm a institutionalist. But Richard has the better argument here. I'm sorry, he does.
I think that you can appreciate the analyses he has more, but I'm not sure it was out of left field, Colin.
Well,
Because Estelle is not a big fan of institutions. All the good she's done has been through grassroots cooperative efforts. She's helping people of all types, big and small, and she's seen what that does, whether it's kill the monster, deliver some goods, or whatever, or rescue the professor.
I fundamentally disagree with the notion that her work as a bracer is grassroots. The Bracer Guild is an institution, a very important one.
It's a decentralized, it's a weak institution. You cannot compare it to the military or the state. They are outside the state apparatus.
Well, given that the state apparatus keeps hiring them, I'm not sure you're right about that.
It's clear they're outside the state apparatus. Look how
I know they're outside. Yeah. I'm saying you can compare them because, I mean, they're fucking fighting the military right now.
Yeah, but it wasn't orders. She had to convince them on the merits, and they decided of their own volition to help.
Estelle got orders from the Queen, brought them to the Bracer Guild, and they're like, yeah, duh, of course we have to help. The Queen hired them as an outside institution to help fight her battles for her because she had nowhere else to turn to. The Bracer Guild is an institution and a very powerful one.
Yeah, but they could have said no. The Bracers could have said no.
But they didn't.
But they chose to. It was the act, the decision to choose of their own free will that makes them different.
What you are agreeing to, though, is the fact that the Bracers are an independent institution that can play on the same playing field. That's what I'm arguing for. Her doing extermination requests is not grassroots.
I never said they're not an institution. I said they're decentralized.
You said that Estelle is anti-institutions as evidenced by her grassroots activities by being a Bracer.
Look how she interacts with the military.
Yes, I agree that she's anti-military for most of the game.
She calls them hidebound. She is very against Colonel Richard with his inflexible, following orders. She will do what she thinks to be the right thing. She is chaotic good. If the law's on her side, she'll do it. If not, she will do what's right, irrespective of what the law is. She views the law as corruptible. Look at how she reacts to the Sky Bandits, who we have completely passed over by now.
Oh, that's true. We didn't talk about them at all this chapter. They're here, by the way. We do fight them.
Look how she reacts to them getting a free pass of some sorts to escape jail. She herself was arrested and forced in close contact with Olivier in a cell. And if that's not cruelty, then I'm not sure what is.
I'm not denying the fact that Estelle can have a bit of anti-establishment streak in her. I wouldn't go so far as to call her an anti-institutional.
I'll say she's anti-establishment.
Sure. All right. So now you want to talk. Now we should talk about how first we need to talk about the real final boss fight, because we found something interesting that I think is only really coming into focus now that people are having more access to Hajimari no Kiseki. The final boss is a big ass robot called Reverie. And so I put it out on Twitter. I'm like, all right, well, we're getting trails into Reverie right now. Is this boss called Hajimari in the original? And it's not. It's a Japanese word. I forget what it is, but it's a translation of a German phrase. Rich told us about this. It's a transliteration of the German word Träumerei, which is the word for dreaming. But so we have the link to dreaming. There's a location in Hajimari no Kiseki I remember from playing called the Reverie Corridor, which in Japanese is called the Mugen Kairo or the Dream Corridor. I'm not going to get into how, because you need to find out by playing Trails the Third, but the Reverie Corridor is linked to things like the Aureole. So there is a connection between the existence of this guy and the concept of the Reverie Corridor. What that is, I am hoping to find out as I play through Hajimari, but I did find that to be an interesting tidbit.
to Estelle and Richard.
So what they don't know is that while I was giving that monologue, you have copied and pasted a picture of Estelle with a quote into our Google Doc.
No, it's Estelle's portrait and the dialogue she gives to Richard in that scene.
Yeah. So what is it?
So she said her dad wasn't just one man. He didn't win the war on his own. And that's the crux, really, of the argument between Richard and Estelle. How did the war end, the 100-Day War? Richard idolizes, almost literally, he places Cassius on a pedestal. Cassius won the war. Estelle says he's just one man. It took everyone doing their part, working together to bring the war to an end. And that's how, if it happens again, it would take everyone doing their part. So for her, the end of the war is what they're both talking about and talking around. And she is basing her analysis on what she knows about the war, on what she's read, on what the Queen has said. So I think it is rooted in something quite specific, Colin, about their divergent interpretations of how did this formative experience for both of them turn out the way it did and why, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. But however, I'm going to argue with Estelle. I'm not arguing with you. I'm arguing with Estelle. Cassius Bright is really fucking important. I mean, there is a reason why Richard has to get Cassius out of the country. There is a reason why Cassius comes in at the last minute to save the day. There is a reason why everybody calls Cassius a hero, because he is a hero. Yes, obviously, you need the rest of the military to cooperate. Yes, obviously, you need the soldiers to fight and listen to orders. But it is a tremendous skill to be able to organize and coordinate movements of that scale with that level of tactical precision that, yeah, her dad is just one man, but he did kind of beat the Imperial Army on his own.
Estelle does not believe in the great man theory of history.
Well, I don't tell Eric, but I do, at least to some extent.
I do for the popular books I'm writing also. So we may just have to agree to disagree here and move on.
Yeah, because we got some stuff to talk about and we're running out of daylight.
At first, I thought Richard should have died, but then I kind of changed my thought on this, Colin, because Cassius coming in, punching Richard, saying he's a child, give up this delusion and grow up. It's more than funny. I think it really works at telling you it's true. Richard does not, or he regressed or didn't grow out of this heroic father figure almost mentality of Cassius is perfect. Almost. And he wants all this because he doesn't have Cassius to guide him anymore.
I think it does a really good job at showing the other part of Cassius's character. We've only seen Cassius as the benevolent father to Estelle and Joshua, kind of lighthearted, making jokes, all of that. But it's in this moment that we can see he has actual ideas. He actually has a serious side that is, defending the country that he's in, defending the people around him. I will say that it was kind of funny to me because I knew that he was going to come in at the end. And you kept texting me things like, the game's coming to an end. Like, Cassius has got to show up at some point. And he does at the final moment of the game.
Yeah. And so I was thinking that the game might forget about him or whatever, but having him come in after you beat Richard, the way he comes in is phenomenal. He deconstructs what Richard is all about. He's not the suave, or not just the suave, cool operator hiding in the shadows. He's a scared little boy almost.
Yeah. You have some quotes you want to share.
Oh, it just says, stop being such a child, Richard, with an exclamation point. You're the one who made the mistake of never letting go of the delusions you had about me. For all of your schemes, why could you never stand on your own 2 feet? It's a brilliant 3 sentences that pierces to the heart. I
think what he says after is even more important. I thought it would be okay to retire. I thought I could comfortably leave the army in your care. It's not just Richard idolized Cassius. It's that Cassius recognized him as a worthy successor. And Richard has failed at doing that. So we finish all of that. And one last thing I want to say about the final boss, and then we get into the final moments of the game, I think. But this is just something that I found funny, and I only discovered this a couple of days ago. So the way that the final scene works is that you beat the second phase of the robot guy, who is an ass, by the way. He is a difficult fight. Cassius comes in, saves the day, and then says, go and beat the boss. And you're given 200 CP for every character. You can just use S-Craft, 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 kill the boss, no problem. It's like a big power fantasy. It's a fulfillment, This is true unless you have literally never earned any extra BP at all. As in, you only did the main quest and you picked wrong choices every single time. If you do that and you have the bare minimum BP, Cassius Bright comes in and just beats the boss for you because he doesn't think you're good enough to do it.
You would have to be deliberate.
Yeah.
Trying.
It'd be really hard to actually do that. So anyway, Cassius saves the day, yada, yada. We beat up the big bad. And then there's a festival. There's a festival celebrating the end of the coup, celebrating the saving of Liberl. And then Josh and Estelle go to, a park bench. And they kind of reflect a little bit on their future. Estelle looks like she wants to tell Joshua her feelings, isn't quite into it yet. It gets flustered and goes out to go get them ice cream, kind of in a panic, which leaves Joshua alone. And Joshua is met by Professor Alba, who we have seen a number of occasions. An archaeologist. Never trust archaeologists, by the way. They're bad news. Never trust archaeologists. Because this archaeologist has a sinister side to him.
So is he immortal? Is he thousands or hundreds of years old or something? Because Joshua says, you're one of the snake apostles, the Anguis, Weissman, the faceless.
So I know what this means. How much of it do you want me to tell you?
I don't want spoilers. I just want contextual information of...
Spoiler free as possible. He does mention there's an organization, right? Anguis is a rank in that organization. He's not 1,000 years old. He's not immortal, but he is a leader of this organization, of which Joshua is also a part. And you can tell through the way that Weissman talks about him that Joshua is a subordinate. Joshua is an enforcer. Weissman is a Anguis.
Joshua Astray, he's called, the Black Fang. I said he was a serial killer. And I'm going to be like Krieger from Archer and say, he's not a serial killer, but he is a killer. He's an assassin.
He even said that he killed every day for however many years.
Okay, granted, moving beyond, I'm just going to accept a 9-year-old as a hardened assassin.
Yes, you should.
This is a soaked in blood. You know what? I'm not even going to raise an eyebrow. I'm going to look at that and be like, yep, should have expected something the fuck like this.
That was really good Cicerone and Praeteritio, by the way. Very proud of you.
He was shaped into a murderer. He tried to kill Cassius. Cassius whooped him 7 ways to Sunday and then took him in. So that gives a lot of new context to these injuries Joshua was recovering from.
Yeah, they were caused by
jumping on the bed.
But a little bit of poetic justice there, right? But it also adds a little bit of context to the beginning of the game where Joshua and Cassius talk. They know that this event had happened, or somewhat. One thing that I'm unclear about is that Weissman is very explicit that Joshua does not remember being part of Ouroboros, being part of this organization. I believe he mentions the name, so it's not a spoiler, but if not, you'll find it in the first 5 minutes of SC. But
how does Joshua remember have all this guilt then?
Exactly.
How do you square this?
So he has some memories of his brother, Leuven. He mentions that at the final scene. It's this guy he's yearning for, but Weissman says he kept that memory of that guy alive. And it's clear that he has some kind of recognition about what had happened because he talks to Cassius about it somewhat. Whenever Alba is around, he responds negatively. He claims I felt uncomfortable and I always wondered why. Playing it again, to me, it seems like he remembers more than he lets on. There's even he will purposefully avoid talking about his past. And I don't think it's because he doesn't remember it. I think it's because he doesn't want to reveal it. But at the same time, it is clear that at the end of that conversation, Weissman goes like this, and you see this flashback of like all these different pictures of like this trauma that Joshua has undergone, and then how this kind of made him into an empty shell of himself, and then he got built up to be this assassin, and he gets to see all of the stuff that he did, leading to fighting Cassius and then being taken part into the Bright household. That is traumatic in and of itself.
Yeah.
Remember, Kevin, this was a traumatic event that can explain some behavior that you don't like.
I still think Joshua, for what he did to Estelle, it's awful.
Let's talk about what he did to Estelle. So Joshua and Estelle, they meet up at the top, and Estelle announced, well, first of all, Joshua tells Estelle his entire life story, and which is interesting. He tells it in the third person. He doesn't use the first person.
He's such a dramatic douchebag.
See, I think that was a literary choice because it's Joshua recognizing that it's him, but also trying to distance himself from it. And then Estelle reveals that she loves Joshua. Joshua kisses her, reveals, yes, I love you too. But in the meantime, also we're not sure how this happened. It was either through like powder on the lips or like pushing a pill in there. I'm not really sure how he knocked her out, but he does. And he does this because he feels that with the person that he is, with what he has done, he does not deserve to be around Estelle anymore. And not only that, but that it's dangerous for Estelle to be around him. So he leaves.
What a selfish sack of shit. Selfish, full of self-pity. He's self-centered. It's all about him. He doesn't stick around to face the consequences of his actions, of what this shattering of Estelle. How will he pick up the pieces? He won't help. She's going to do it on her own with whoever. He flees from facing them. He flees from owning what he just did to her, how she will recontextualize their relationship. The harm he knows he has just caused to Estelle. The harm he knows he will do by kissing her and drugging her at the same time, creating this connotation for what she wanted, this acknowledgement that they both loved each other. Yeah, it's traumatic. Not everything is about him. My respect for Joshua plummeted.
I mean, I think that a certain plummeted through the roof. I think that a certain amount of sympathy has to be given to the man. I mean, however much was repressed was instantly brought back. He's clearly disassociated from himself. He feels enormous guilt about the action that he's already done that he cannot take back. On top of that, I mean, now he's remembering this very dangerous organization that he's been a part of. He knows that they have been around in every moment. He's aware that he has been spying on Cassius Bright and Estelle for the past 5 years and giving that information to Weissman. He didn't know it before. He knows it now. We have that textually established by Weissman. I don't know how that works, but that's how it works. So you get all of that revealed, which means that Joshua recognizes he's been putting them in danger the whole time. He's unworthy of being loved, which he already kind of felt in the beginning of the game. Now is just further reinforced. I don't think that he's just self-centered. Also, his actions are meant to protect Estelle because he has literally been endangering her the whole time by reporting on their movements and being a spy, even unknowingly. Now, I agree with you. Kissing the woman that you love and then also knocking her out, not great. Not the best breakup I've ever seen. But to defend even I'm not defending the knockout gas part of it, but a breakup necessitates you walking away from the harm that you caused. Nobody walks out of a breakup and actually feels good about it unless the relationship was like well and truly dead. And somebody's got to do the breakup. It's not a fair critique to say, oh, well, you caused them harm. You weren't around to fix what you had caused by breaking up with somebody. If that were the case, all of my ex-girlfriends are horrible people. And they're not horrible people. So I defend Joshua on this point.
Their relationship was good.
It was until Joshua realized all of the shitty things he's had to do and has a literal psychological breakdown.
Okay, I'm not going to pass over Joshua has killed at least hundreds.
Yeah.
Maybe like 1,000.
Okay, so we know that he's been in their care for I don't even know how long it's been, but at least like 2 years, right? Don't remember precisely how many years it is, but let's even say 2 or 3. There are 365 days a year, and literally what we've been told is that he killed every single day. Who knows how literally that's meant? But if we take it literally, he's killed over 500 people. He's killed over 600 people. In fact, he's killed 700 people. It took me a while to get to the math there. I'm a historian. I'm not a mathematician.
Yeah, so I get the whole protagonist-centered morality, but Joshua should be put on trial in most any fair justice system in the world. I felt really bad about it. It's not a defense. We usually let serial killers be like, you know what? That's true. You can go scot-free.
You know what? You know what we haven't seen yet? A court of law. We haven't seen that at all.
There's no public education system in the way that we would understand. We don't see many references to what happens to bad guys after Estelle beats them up.
The only jail that we see is owned by the military.
Okay, the mayor of Rouen is arrested
Yes.
by the military.
Yes.
There may not, we don't get any hint a civilian justice system exists.
No, I think it's all centered in the hands of the military. So
Kind of horrifying.
I think constitutional scholars should play this game and realize why we have a separation of civilian and military institutions. Because this was like once Colonel Richard took over the military, he took over all of society. Like he took over the entire government.
Yeah, it's a weak administrative state because we're told in the castle the nobles would often raise mutinies in the kingdom in Grantham and never once breached the keep. So
I don't think it's a weak administrative state anymore because the nobles did. But you know what the kingdom did? They got rid of the nobles. And we've already established that the mayors and everything, they can't do that. They don't have militaries to do that.
So maybe they have strong state capacity, but the bureaucratic apparatus is just not large or complex.
It's kind of like the Roman Empire. You know, the bureaucracies out in the provinces up until the Diocletianic reforms, not that significant, not that stringent.
One question I have, and we may not get a definitive answer, was there one foreshadowing for this enough to guess? Two, whether yes or no, does stuff like this need foreshadowing? Is it okay to just have a twist?
Well, I think that we need to understand why foreshadowing is, because I don't think that all foreshadowing means is that we are able to guess the conclusion.
Not a whodunit.
The entirety of this podcast, we've been talking about Joshua knows too much shit. Joshua has a mysterious past. Like that's been hinted at. It's taken me some effort to not tell you what was going on whenever I'm seeing all of these different moments, because knowing what I knew, I saw that as forward looking. Clearly this part of the character had already been designed. At the same time, when I played through this the first time and I got to that revelation, I was shocked. My mouth was agape. And I think that is effective. It really did take me by surprise, but then upon looking back, it made sense. To me, that's a successful foreshadow.
I think that's good. Not everything needs to be guessable in advance.
Correct.
But if I see in retrospect what they were building to, that's fine enough by me. And oftentimes it works better in some situations. I think like this, if you could not have guessed Joshua was a kid assassin working for a secret organization from the age of 8 to 10. I mean, my whole thing about he's a killer was half tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but you were right.
I should have been like, what's the most anime JRPG-esque thing I could explain this? Which would have been Joshua, age 9, was the most hardened killer on the continent. So, I should have guessed it.
We're going to talk about your predictions in the retrospective. I mean, we don't need it in this episode with how long we've been talking. But you have asked me a couple of times, like, are at least one of my predictions right? And I would say yes. And I'm thinking, like, sometimes I would say yes, sometimes I would say no about the Joshua thing. But you were so close that I basically counted as like, yeah, you're pretty much right.
I mean, he killed for larger reasons. I mean, he was told, but they were to some sort of larger cause, the goal of the organization, whatever. And that's essentially a serial killer with purpose, I would say.
Yeah. Well, with that, Kevin, we have reached the end of this chapter. We've reached the end. Like, that was literally the end of the game. Credits have rolled. Do you have any last thoughts about this chapter before we wrap up?
I loved the ending still images.
Yeah.
We get high school Shira with Estelle and Joshua. It's Estelle and Joshua, playing, being rambunctious. Well, Estelle being rambunctious, like old sepia photographs. And it's just The art style it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to cap this game by reminding us in the beginning and the end. This story is about Joshua and Estelle.
Yeah, the relationship is at the center of it, and this brings that point home.
It's a brilliant game. I'll have more to say in the retrospective in a couple weeks, because I think this would be a two-parter. We've gone over 2 hours.
Yeah, this we're going to divide this for sure. I mean, we're going to have to, edit some stuff, but it's not going to be that much.
I cannot wait to get into the second chapter.
SC was I forced myself to play Final Fantasy X in between FC and SC. And normally I cannot play 3 JRPGs in a row, but I got into SC and I was like, I have to go back. It was calling me the entire time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us. Remember, we have our question. Well, at this point, you've probably answered it. But what do you look for when you're evaluating your RPGs? What stands out to you? What's the most important part? Let us know. Email trailsinthepod@gmail.com. Twitter, trailspod, at trailsinthepod. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.